I want to talk today about four things, four qualities. These are four qualities that every single student of knowledge should have by default. And these are four qualities that should be there before actually starting to seek knowledge. If you have these four qualities before starting to seek knowledge, then whatever knowledge you gain will be good knowledge. See, you can't really gain, you can actually gain bad knowledge though. There's, you can. I'm not want to talk too much about bad knowledge because that's just not the point. But when you're seeking knowledge and you start off with these four qualities within yourself or try to bring them within yourself and you constantly remind yourself for these four qualities, then you gain good knowledge and you're really you become a good person. But also there's one thing that everyone should if you're seeking knowledge should try their best to focus on is gaining what you call being an expert. Being an expert, known as malaka. And when you have, or when you are an expert and you have these four qualities together, then you become a powerhouse. You become very strong, and you become excellent. These four qualities, and along with knowing your basics and being excellent and being an expert. This world has a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge, a lot of information. Sorry, not knowledge. Have a lot of information, and then you have on the other side, you have a lot of people who have a lot of qualities, but we need to merge them together. Institutes like Al Huda and different other institutes that we have, like local. It's good that they have this environment of learning within like a masjid atmosphere. It's a really good thing. And then you have these online institutes that there's no like spirituality at all. We don't even want to talk about those. But when you talk about expertise starts off with being excellent and knowing your basics really well. And that's not the topic today. I want to talk about these four qualities and how they impact and how I personally, the only reason I'm giving this lecture here about these four qualities is so that, specifically so that I can bring them into my own life, because the best way to learn how to read Qur'an is to read it out loud. And I'm not going to, if I talk to a mirror and talk about these four qualities, then I look like I need to get to the hospital. So it's best I use this as an excuse to talk to a bunch of people and then remind myself as well about these four qualities. The first quality is what you call bir. Bir. Having bir. B-I-R. Or bara, with a shadda. Bir is interesting. It's a quality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about. And these are four qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Qur'an. And these are qualities of the people who, if you want to be close to Allah, you bring these four qualities into your life. Whatever it is you do, make sure you have all these four. It's not like have one and you're good. No. Have one is you've gone quarter way. You get the second one, you've gone half. You got to have four qualities within yourself. If you're missing any one of these, then it's still deficient. First one is bir. Bir means, I guess it can mean doing good deeds. Now there's one way of bir which is good and one way of bir which is bad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Qur'an, where there's people who are going to fight over the small subtle points. The best example, I have a student whose husband is teaches driving. A student living in Toronto and teaches driving. And in the middle of conversation, I said that basically the message I was trying to get, and the conversation that we're having was the new drivers tend to look right at the hood when they're driving. If you think about it, new drivers, they just look right at the hood and they're driving looking down. And as you progress, as you get better and better, you start looking there when you're driving. I was driving from Albuquerque to Flagstaff, and I was just looking at the mountain. That was about 500 miles away. Just look at the top of the mountain. I just kept on driving, and I didn't go off the road. The further you look, the more straight you'll be. The closer you look, the more you're gonna swerve around. And this is a general advice. What you want to do is, a lot of people assume that good deeds, I'm doing a good deed, Amar bil ma'ruf nahi anil munkar, I'm doing a good deed, and what they're doing is they're reminding other people to be like them. And that's just a problem, because everyone's different. And you can't force me to be like you, and I can't force you. When my own story, when I started to mold myself to be like someone else, then I became unhealthy. And everything went all over the place. But when we focus on looking far and looking at where we actually need to be, then the small points become irrelevant. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Qur'an. You want to have birr. And what is birr? Birr is a combination of two things. Number one, your belief. And number two is your ethics. And if your ethics are connected with Allah, then those ethics can actually become worship. So if you see someone who's on the side of the road who's like legitimately doesn't have enough, and they're struggling, and it's cold, it's winter, and it's really, really cold, and you go and you just give them something, and don't expect anything, you just give them some food or whatever. Now, what happens is, if you gave it to them to look good, then that's not birr. You have to have a combination of two things. What are the two things? I'm doing this for Allah. That's why I'm giving it, because I'm doing it for Allah. And I'm also giving. So giving for Allah. There's two things there. Now you have that intention, that good intention, and then you have the giving aspect of it. So you've brought in that, well, I guess you can say spirituality, but you brought in that awareness of doing a particular act, number one, and number two, you did it for Allah. And these acts revolve around ethics. This is an ethical thing to do, right? Someone was struggling and you gave them something. That's an awesome ethical thing to do, and you've done that, and it's perfect, it's good. You brought two things into it. That's birr. What birr tends to do is, when you start doing everything with birr, I'm not even talking about worshipping. I'm not talking about salah, zakah, sawm, and hajj. That's not there. I'm talking about just general ethics, universal ethics, being good to one another, etc. But combine it with these two qualities, you'll do birr. But not to focus on the small details. If you're going to start focusing on the small details, I'm telling you to wear a topi for the sake of Allah. No, that's not birr. That's just you telling someone to wear a topi for the sake of Allah, and you think it's for the sake of Allah. Or like these smaller details where you're focusing on looking right at the hood of the car while you're driving, you're not going to get anywhere. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that. People are fighting, Qibla is this way or that way. We know the verse of the Qur'an, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبْلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. It doesn't mean there's no Qibla direction, but it's a little bit of a direction, a bigger direction Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you. وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ وَآتَى الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ وَالسَّائِلِينَ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَى الزَّكَاةَ وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ. So this verse of the Qur'an is explaining to us that you have your actions. So our prayers, salah, zakah, sawm, hajj, obviously we're going to do it for Allah. If you're not doing it for Allah, then do it for Allah. Okay, it's not good. But all of our ethics, so many things that we do, where we start to compromise, and where I find a lot of humans compromise, is our ethics. We tend to compromise our ethics and do our ethics for everyone besides Allah. So there may be an agenda. Why is it that I'm doing this? Why is it that I'm doing that? Once you start realizing that, and you start connecting yourself with Allah from these ethical points, life becomes so much more easy and excellent, because you start to focus more on yourself and you stop focusing on everyone else. It's very interesting. Try it out. The subtle ethical points, even if it comes to putting down, let's say your father's or your mother is going somewhere and you just put their slippers or their shoes on the floor. And just ethical points like that. It's birr, these actions combined with you doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm strictly talking ethics right now. Because unfortunately the Muslim Ummah is forgetting about ethics. We're forgetting about just basic ethics. We're forgetting about it, and we're substituting our ethics with differences of opinion, which is, it's a huge problem. So ethics is irrelevant, difference of opinion becomes relevant. And when difference of opinion becomes relevant, so now just because you're praying differently than me, so for me to tell you to pray like the way I'm praying becomes bir. You get what I'm saying? It's an oxymoron. It's a problem. It's like, what? We get issues. We get like major like fiqh. Toronto's still kind of normal. In Edmonton, we get major issues like that where in next year's May, yeah. So even next year, will kind of still be there during the month of Ramadan, where you start your fast at like 2:30 and you break your fast at 10:45. So it's a long fast. So now you have some scholars who are going to come and they're going to say, yeah, you have to fast the whole time. And then you have other scholars who are going to say, well, you know what? If you want to break your fast, just pick up the Makkah calendar and look at what time they're starting at, what time they're breaking, and just follow Makkah. Because clearly the Prophet ﷺ never ever fasted this many hours. Right? And then you have another group of individuals who are going to say, no, if you're strong and healthy, fast the whole time, all those so many hours. It's kind of really bad. I mean, the situation there. I'm talking about because people do like OMAD, intermittent fasting. Have you guys heard of OMAD? 1 meal a day, intermittent fasting. In other words, they don't eat at all. They don't even break their fast. They just eat suhoor. Because there's no time. I mean, think about the heartburn. I mean, dinner, then 20 rakats up and down, or 8 rakats, whatever you follow. And then after that, then suhoor, and you got to shove your face as well, just because you want to be full. Anyways, it's problems. People just only eat like one meal, and they're really strategic on how they eat food. Now, and then you have other people who are going to be like, fine, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, then for you, only fast the short hours. So are you trying to say we're going to break our fast like at Zohar time? Sure, break your fast at Zohar time. It's still Zohar because Zohar goes till like 9. I mean, like 7 or 8, right? So people are praying Asr and they're breaking their fast. Some people. So when you have an extreme situation like this, and then you have certain individuals who are going to come out and say, astaghfirullah, they're all wrong, haram, and now you're doing takfir of other people based on differences of opinion, and it just goes chaos. The interesting thing is these differences of opinion, whether you agree with them or you do disagree with them, they're always going to be there, they're going to exist, but the ethical points are such that there's no difference of opinion. Isn't that cool? There's no difference of opinion within ethical points, and when there's no difference of opinion within ethical points, but we still are going to put those aside and want to focus on fighting over small, subtle points, which is problem. And that's where the concept of bir comes in, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look, there's difference of opinion when you're fighting over qibla here, qibla there. That's not the point. Get through it, overlook that. Of course, you need to face the qibla when you're praying, but the main things is these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to do, which is bir. So the first thing we want to bring into our life is bir. Number 2, ihsan. Ihsan's got two tracks to it as well. I'm not a good lecturer. I teach, so I put into like things into perspective. So, ihsan. What is ihsan? Well, ihsan, very easy. The Prophet ﷺ said that you worship Allah as if you are seeing Him, and if you, obviously you can't see Allah. لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار. So therefore worship Him knowing that He sees you. This ihsan is very interesting because the level of ihsan for people, it ranges depending on your situation. If you are a little bit more, if you've been tested by Allah a little bit, then your level of ihsan is a little bit more. If you haven't been tested, then your level of ihsan is a little bit less. And if you haven't been tested at all, your level of ihsan is perfect. Well, babies, right? They're like excellent ihsan. But then, parents tend to take them off the path. Anyways, when it comes to ihsan, well, there's a good way, excellent way to look at it, and then there's a bad way to look at it. The excellent way to look at it, I'm going to go back to ethics now. First of all, it's a no-brainer when you're praying salah, then do it for Allah. When you're fasting, when you're doing all of these ibadat, do it for Allah. But the problem when it comes to ihsan is, again, with our ethics, and leading this back to bir. When we have good ethics, if we have good ethics, how we deal with people, how we're talking to people, whatever ethics that there are, universal code of ethics, if we do these for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's considered ihsan. A lot of people, what they've done is they've ruined the term ihsan and they've manipulated it to mean some sort of spirituality. So which is fine. It's a good spirituality, but from ihsan they derive the science of like tasawwuf or Sufism, and ihsan became so focused on people seeing Allah in every single aspect of their life, and created theological problems of people who started to claim that, well, we have Allah within us and Allah is everywhere and all of that. It's not a class on theology, so I'm not going to delve into that debate. But the point that I'm trying to make here is ihsan is pretty general. Imagine if when you were yelling at your spouse, or when you were yelling at your kids, or when you were preparing breakfast, or when you were getting ready to go for work, you kept that in mind. You get what I'm saying? Every aspect. I'm talking right now, I have to get up and walk over there. I'm putting my shoes on, sitting in my car. If you kept that in mind, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you, imagine how, that's kind of scary. But we don't do that because we focused all of our ihsan on our worship. Again, worship's not bad. Do your worship. That's a no-brainer, but we need to extend it further. There's no point if we're going to be worshiping and doing everything for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not reflecting that after. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Salah stops from fahsha and munkar, right? If our salah is not done with ihsan, or if we're not even focused on it, how is that going to stop us from doing bad things later on? Ihsan, you want to understand ihsan from that point of view, that you want to translate that, you want to extend it into our every aspect of our life. Every aspect of our life. It's something so general. You see, this is not something specific to one sect of Muslims. This is general for like every single Muslim out there. This is general to Christians and Jews as well. Like if Christians and Jews actually like focused on their God watching over them for every single thing that they did, they would be perfect. And this is actually taught within Christianity and Judaism as well. This concept of ihsan, in different language, but within Muslims, when I'm referring to it, we stop focusing or stop confining ihsan to your worships and your fasting and your salah and your zakah and your sawm and your hajj. That's already there. It should be there, but extend it onto every single aspect of your life. Extend it onto all the different phases of your life. When you're a child, teach this to your children. When you're an adult, when you're pregnant, when you're breastfeeding, when you have reached an old age, when you're an athlete, every single aspect use ihsan. And this ihsan would translate. And when shaitan notices you got ihsan, then shaitan's going to come after you, right? Because he wants to tip you. And when shaitan comes after you, then because you have ihsan, shaitan, it's going to be hard for him to penetrate and actually get into you. إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلِصِينَ, except for those people who are sincere and doing things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what this does is it kind of protects you. And the more ihsan you have, the further you realize that you don't need anyone else to be there for you. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough for you. The third thing, that was the second thing, ihsan. So there's a wrong way to understand ihsan and there's the correct way to understand ihsan. Number 3 is called sabr, patience. Sabr or patience. Now there's a bad way to understand sabr and a good way to understand sabr. Sabr or patience is a good thing. There's no bad way. I mean, always have patience. But the type where sabr comes in, connected to a student of knowledge or someone who's seeking knowledge, there's a lot of sabr when it comes to seeking knowledge. Tafsir students understand that so much. But there's a lot of sabr when it comes to seeking knowledge. And this sort of sabr comes in from, there's a lot of tafsir students here. This sabr comes in from two things. Number one is if you're learning knowledge, sabr was the key thing that Khidr alayhi salam told Musa alayhi salam when he said to come to him. He says, you're not going to have any sabr. Sorry, you can't. You won't be able to deal with me. إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. And he kept on saying that. See, didn't I tell you you can't have sabr? Then I tell you can't have sabr. it's the concept of sabr when it connects to knowledge. If you want to understand superficial knowledge, it doesn't require any sabr at all. The only sabr is, I got to spend my hours of my day. That's not sabr. That's just, you got to spend hours of the day. Sabr, it's different levels of sabr. The first level of sabr, you used to have your superficial sabr, where someone punches you and you're like, I'm going to hold it. Or that type of sabr. Or I have 2 hours, I got to spend 1 hour either listening to this lecture by this guy or watching Netflix or something. So you have this type of sabr where you got to hold it. That's superficial. That's, anyone can do that type of sabr. You do good time management, it's not even sabr anymore. Or if you're listening to a class and you just have the teacher playing in the background, that's still not sabr at all. But another type of sabr goes a lot more deeper than that. And that deep sabr is when it's directly connected to knowledge. And I consider that that's 2 tracts. Number 1 tract of sabr is when you start gaining knowledge. When you start gaining knowledge. Most of the people that are learning knowledge, they get too afraid. Any student who studies with me or wants to study advanced sciences with me, I tell them, first of all, إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. I see this all the time. But still, if you want to seek knowledge, then you're going to need to be ready to, because what knowledge does to you, العلم لا يعطيك بعضه حتى تعطيه كلك. Knowledge is not going to give a part of it to you until you give 100% of it to knowledge. You get it? Knowledge is not going to give even a little bit to you until you give 100% to it. And if you think about it, 100% of yourself is not just, oh, I got to take some time out of my day. That's 100%. That's superficial information. You gain a lot of information. But knowledge is a lot more than that. There's 2 tracts when it comes to patience, when it comes to sabr. Number 1, the first one is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts opening things up to you as you're starting to read ahead, gaining vision. See, until right now, you're still polishing your car. You're still looking in front when you're driving. When you start gaining sabr, you start seeing far. And when you start seeing far, then a lot of things open up to you. In front of you was really clean, but when you saw really, really far, you noticed that there was an iceberg there and the boat was gonna hit it. Clearly they didn't have sabr, that captain or whatever, looking down all the time. It hit the iceberg. And anyways, but what I'm trying to say is when you look at it, when you look far, then so many things open up to you. And when a lot of things open up to you, then that's where it requires true sabr, patience. What does that mean? You start understanding things that you never ever understood. You start seeing things that you probably did not want to see or never wanted to see. Awesome advice that my advisor gave me. He said, same advice I give to all the students when they're finishing is, an oyster, if you open an oyster shell, there's pearls inside, and the pearl is just dirt that got in. It's actually dirt that got in and stayed there for a long time. It says, don't be afraid to take the dirt, because a true researcher, the second they start research, they're going to go through the dirt. But when they come out of the dirt, that's where they're going to actually be strong. How do you clean clothes? You just pour water over it? No, you're going to have to scrub it a little. You're going to have to scrub it and you hit the cloth against the rocks or whatever. I don't know how they clean it. But you has to go through a lot in order for it to become clean. In order for you to become pure, you're going to have to go through that sabr. And that sabr, the more knowledge you gain, the more you start to see it, and the more you understand it, and the more you appreciate it. That's where that sabr comes in. The more you look far, and the more knowledge you're gaining, the deeper you're going in. The more you're digging, the more work it takes from you, but the more fun it becomes. And sabr is something that's addictive. Sabr is something that's super addictive. It's interesting. It's very, very addictive because you start to taste the sweetness of knowledge. You start to taste the sweetness of knowledge. If any one of you are superficially learning knowledge, you don't know what I'm talking about. If one of you are getting a little bit more deep into it, it's sweet and it's addictive. You want to do more. I want more. I want more. And then you keep on going into it. You keep on going into it. It's scary. I'm studying nutrition right now, and studying holistic nutrition. And as I'm reading about just water, just reading about water itself, whole like 400 pages just on water. And I'm reading, I'm like, I don't want to read the next chapter. No, I don't want to, because, like, put it this way, I finished half the chapter and I didn't want to drink water anymore. I just boil the water all the time before I drank it. Like, it's like you realize how much pollution there is and how much all that stuff was within the water. But it's still your brain is telling you, go ahead, keep on reading it, keep on reading it, keep on reading it, keep on reading it, and then you actually end up going through it. That's how knowledge works. That you need to have that patience, that mental patience, and you have to be ready for it. Be ready for that mental patience. This is where the first type of sabr. Now the second type of sabr is essential, because the second type of sabr is where most students fail. Well, the first type of sabr, most students do fail, but they still don't fail because it's still addictive. It's still addictive, right? You still want it, you want more, you want more, you want more. You want to call in sick, but then you're like, but I want more. That's what it is. The second type is where most students fail. I don't know what it is, 21st century Muslims or something, I don't even know, but most students fail. Like, what's the best way to understand this? I had a student who was reading Qur'an to me, and I used to correct the student very, very harshly. Very, very harsh. It was like very harsh. I felt bad. I used to cry after. And, no, I didn't. The student told me, the student said that after I finished reading many, many times, I would sit on the musalla and I'd be crying. And I'm not supposed to laugh, but it's a funny story because she was laughing also. And she said, so my kids came up to me and they said, they were like, our mom is so pious. Every time she reads Quran, she starts crying, not realizing that she's crying because the amount of I was actually correcting her. Reminds me of another story. I have a student of mine who one day he was leading Taraweeh and he started crying so much in Taraweeh. And the whole musalla was crying. And every single person was crying and just crying. And there's like noises of crying and men and women, everyone crying. And he's crying also. He finished his salah and I'm like, hey, like, what are you crying for? And he came and told me after the whole story. He said that I was crying because I made too many mistakes in Taraweeh and I was afraid that I'm going to get in trouble after. Everyone else is crying because of the verses of the Qur'an. It was interesting, but this type of, that's just a side story. It's me going off on a tangent. I do it all the time. But the fun part about it, of this whole sabr part, is where Imam Shafi'i says, "Isbir ala murril jafa min muallimi fa inna rusub al-ilmi fi nafaratihi." That the bitterness of the teacher is where the depth of the knowledge is. Now, there's two types of bitterness when it comes to the teacher. Now, one is the teacher just being bitter because the teacher just doesn't like you. Now, you shouldn't study with that person. But a true teacher's bitterness with an individual, if the teacher is correcting you and being a little bit harsh with you, the reason is because the teacher knows what it takes to get that far. It takes more than what you're giving. And therefore the teacher will be a little bit more rough with you. Not going to be so rough, but be a little bit more rough, correct you a little bit harder. Because you see, in all honesty, if the teacher didn't care, the teacher wouldn't correct you. You get it? If the teacher didn't care, the teacher wouldn't correct you at all. It won't, yeah, you know what, doesn't matter. But if the teacher is correcting you, that bitterness of the teacher, that's where you need to have patience as a student. The second place of patience is the bitterness of the teacher's discipline or the teacher's correction. At that point, you just got to take it in, breathe, and kind of move on from it. And go back and realize, think about what is it that I did. I remember one day in class, a student of me and another student, this is when we were studying about like 15 years ago, we were having a little discussion in the back of the class, and the teacher wasn't there. The teacher was not in class. So we can talk, right? The teacher's not in class. Like imagine like your teacher wasn't here and you're still waiting for the teacher, so we're talking. And the teacher came in and noticed us. We were supposed to be the good students in the class. So the teacher noticed us and gave us the silent treatment. Like the teacher would constantly refer to us. We're like, oh, what does the sharah say? What does this say? Like constantly asking us. And halfway through the class, I'm like, I think he's upset at us. He's not looking at us. Like did not look at us at all, did not stare at it, nothing. Just, we're sitting in front, the teacher would look there, look down, and then look there, look down, like totally bypass us. We felt so bad. But this is a type of like discipline. Went to the teacher after and he said, I don't want to talk to you right now. Like we were like boycott for like 48 hours. It was bad. It was like death. But it was interesting because I'd never forget that lesson. Never ever forget that lesson at all. And that's where the bitterness of the teacher comes in. 21st century, unfortunately, is kind of weird. I don't even understand what it is. The second the teacher says something, oh, teacher, you have no right to talk to me like that. Sorry, it's just funny. I can't even say it with a straight face. Sure, if it's superficial knowledge, clearly teachers have no right to talk to students like that. Don't disrespect the students and don't be bad. A lot of weird disrespect happens within the classroom. That's just really, really bad. Many teachers need to be lashed. That's a different story. And I'm on camera, I don't know what's going to happen to me. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to knowledge, specifically for knowledge, this sort of discipline is necessary. And if you are doing something which requires discipline, take it and have patience and move on from it. And move on from it and learn from it, and you're actually going to be such a strong student. Because I know one thing. There are two types of students that even I am going to discipline. As a teacher, I'll tell you the tricks of the trade. Now, one student is reading to me, and then let's just say I discipline the student, and I really discipline them, like really badly discipline them. Like, I have to make sure, like, because you read on the phone, I have to make sure I sigh pretty loud because you can't really hear it. I don't do that. Yeah, I do. I know you guys know. You guys hear me. So, but there's a student that was reading, like, let's say student missed an imala and said, like, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى or something, and said Musa, and I'm like, did you miss an imala? Yeah. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا, no. Did you miss an imala? Yeah, I missed an imala. Okay, why did you miss an imala? They'll stay quiet, and then they'll read it, and they'll continue. Well, no. I never said read. Please explain to me why you missed this imala. I want to know. Is there a reason why you missed this imala? Imagine that the student's feeling right now. They're like sweating or whatever. And I can't see the sweating, so I can't even feel pity on them. This is the best situation. I discipline students way more online than I do in person. Because in person, you feel bad for them. You see a student starts like sweating and stuff, but just no. Why? Stop reading. I want to know. Is there a reason? Like, people have a reason. Like, if you're doing things without a reason, then that makes you, like, weird. Like, you don't do things without a reason. You made a mistake. Did you make a mistake to test if I know my stuff? Maybe, right? You're making a mistake to test if I correct you or not. No, I made a mistake because I forgot. Okay, so don't forget again, okay? Okay, good. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابَ فَاخْتُلِفَ فِيهِ وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَةٌ سَبَقَتْ مِنْ رَبِّكَ لَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُمْ وَإِنَّهُمْ لَفِي شَكٍّ وَإِنَّهُمْ or something. Did you miss the sila? وَإِنَّهُمْ. No. Did you miss the sila? Yeah. Why? وَإِنَّهُمْ. I never said read. Please explain to me why you missed it. I forgot. Oh, like, this drives the students crazy. Think about if you were reading to me and I was doing that to you. You'd want to, squeeze the phone. It's all phone language, and in person you'd probably just kind of look down or whatever. But like these type of corrections, like a lot of students would do it. So that's a certain amount of students that I will constantly correct. I'll correct. Why am I correcting? Because I know you can get better. Because if I knew you couldn't get better, I'd just be like, okay, move on. It's okay, move on. And then there are certain students that me as a teacher, I'm not going to correct. Because either they've shown some sort of disrespect and I don't even care. I don't feel like teaching them. I'll just be like, okay, whatever. Yeah, that's okay, it's good. Because I know after about a month they're going to drop out anyways. And that's where it comes with the patience part of it. The sabr, understanding what sabr is. وَالصَّبْرُ ضِيَاء, right? The Prophet ﷺ said having patience is a light. And when you actually are looking far and it looks really, really dark, when you have that patience, you start seeing it. And this patience is not just for, someone harmed you. I'm talking about patience in regards to knowledge. You got to take it from two aspects. The patience with when it comes to seeking that knowledge. If you want to be a good scholar, you're going to have to go through the dirt. You will get dirty. And you get really dirty. And you're going to have to come out of it like with your stomach's being turned around, and probably after class you have to go take a shower and stuff. Like if you're really, really dirty. But that's what it is. You come out stronger. And also you'll come out stronger if you're patient on the teacher and the teacher's being stern with you. I was reading that actually many scholars would attest to this, and all teachers agree with this. It's weird how all teachers agree to this also, that if the teacher disciplines you, then you know your stuff properly. I think it's pretty biased when the teachers agree with this, but still, I know of many scholars who say, and I can attest to that myself, that when we were disciplined, those days we like, we don't forget what we learn to this day. We don't forget. We know it inside out. And much of the discipline happens when we try to take shortcuts. As students, we try to take shortcuts. Unfortunately, the teacher isn't just a teacher because they took shortcuts. The teacher actually went through it to get over there. And when the teacher went through it to get over there, those shortcuts won't work with you because the teacher's going to notice it. By default, that's what happens. Number 4, taqwa. Number 4 is taqwa. So you had bir, ihsan, sabr, and taqwa. 4th quality is taqwa. What is taqwa? Translates as piety, being pious, etc. But the word taqwa, same root letters, waw, qaf, ya, taqwa. You can look up different letters. Some people say taqaf, ya, etc. Grammarians do your thing. But taqwa itself means to stay away from doing something. Staying away from doing something. There's different levels of taqwa. When it comes to taqwa, there's a bad way of understanding it, and there's a good way of understanding it. The bad way of understanding taqwa is it just means to be pious. That's so weird and subjective because piety is different for different people, right? Everyone's gone through different challenges, so they see piety from different ways. Again, it's very personal. The correct way of understanding taqwa, the word pious it's weird. It's a weird word. I don't like it. But the word, when it comes to taqwa means to stay away. And staying away from, there's different levels. It's staying away from things that displease Allah. To the best of your ability. Staying away from those things that displease Allah to the best of your ability. And that's essentially what taqwa is. Staying away from, and then the best thing to do as students is build yourself up. Like create rules for yourself. I'm going to stay away from, every single one of us, every single person here can actually sit down, close their eyes, and think about things that they're doing which are non-taqwa-like. Correct? Right? Every single one. Every single person can be like, okay, whatever it may be. Things that are non-taqwa-like. If you can think of what these things are, then start one by one and tackle these things one by one. Be like, what is it that I need to do to help me stay away from this bad thing that I'm doing? You go to the second thing. What is it that I need to do to help me stay away from that bad thing? What you're doing, you're taking an initiative. Have you heard of those people who they can't memorize the Qur'an, but they still try? A lot of people, right? It's Al-Huda Institute. It's probably full of people like that who can't memorize the Qur'an, but they're trying. So what hope do they have? The Huffaz steal all the light. But what hope do these people have? What are you going to tell an elder brother or sister, just anyone who's not able to memorize? Are you going to be like, yeah, sorry, you're not going to get the rewards? What are you going to say? Not even double the reward. What I tell them is, I say just start memorizing. Even memorize one ayah, memorize one line, memorize one word. Just make that intention and do it. And inshallah, when you die, you'll be raised among the Huffaz. Because you took that initiative, you made that intention. I mean, think about it. If a person intends to come for prayer and they miss the prayer, or if a person intends to pray tahajjud and they miss the tahajjud, what happens? They get the rewards. But we don't do that for hifz. It's so convenient, and we have to start understanding that if a person intends to memorize the Qur'an, true intention, and they still can't do it, but they're still trying, they make that intention, clearly I believe that they're going to be raised among the Huffaz. And because of that intention. When it comes to taqwa, the parallel I'm trying to bring is if we make this intention to stop committing sins, and don't make blanket statements. No, that's the worst thing you want to do. You know, like the before Hajj blanket forgiveness? Assalamu alaikum, I'm going for Hajj, everyone forgive me if I did anything wrong to you. And the person is just like, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't forgive you, you did something really bad to me. The blanket statements don't work. You have to physically, like if you've harmed someone, go to them and say, listen, Zawar, I did this to you and I feel I harmed you, so please forgive me. In my own head, I have things. I'm like, okay, I need to work on A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Every single one of us can do this. It's scary to do it. Isn't it scary? Because you're sitting down and you're listing out to yourself all of the things that you need to work on. But it's a really scary thing to do. But imagine if you were to die right now and you were resurrected and all of a sudden those things came up. That's scary. So what you want to do is put these things in front of you, in your own head, and start little by little. So let's just say you have 10 things that you need to work on. Or let's say you're almost an angel and you have one thing to work on. No, it's not like that. Let's say you have 10 things to work on. Out of those 10 things, you tackle them one by one. So I'm gonna create a system. Have you heard of the life coaching wheel? Who heard of the life coaching wheel? Anyone heard of it? It's a little wheel, and there's 8 areas of a person's life that you write down: education, relationship, I don't know, finances. There's different areas, and you look at one area and you're like, am I, in regards to my education, am I at 100%, or am I at where do I feel I am at any point in time? And then depending on where you feel you are, you color that much of the circle. You color that much of it. So some people have this much color, some people have that much color. Some people are like, yeah, I have like 400 PhDs and they color the whole thing, right? But I still feel like I need to learn something else, and then they empty it a little bit. And they fill up different areas. Even come to finances. Finances, it's a little circle, and then they start coloring it. And I feel like I'm happy in my finances. I'm good, so they color the whole thing. Some people are like, I'm not happy, they color half of it. There's 8 different areas. You can Google it and you'll find a life coaching wheel. What I do is every 3-4 months, quarterly, I have on my computer, right on the front page, it says Uthman Life Coaching. It's my own thing. And it's private. You can't access it because I have a numbered code on it. And then I put in my numbers, I open it up, and I look at everything on there. Like, I need to fix this. Did I do that? Oh, this is good. I did that. Did that. So I have everything listed out for me where I need to improve or where I need to work on. Now, what you do is, leaving that aside, it's a good thing for every one of us to do. But when it comes to sins, if you have 10 things you need to work on or 10 things you want to fix, whether it's sins or whether it's ethical or unethical things that you're doing, one by one. If imagine removing things one by one with proper intention and being like, Allah, I want to stop this one by one, and you can visually see everything in front of you, and you start building on top of it, and start fixing everything. I don't want to play God, but I'm sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept it from you. If you actually die that way, you'll die without any sin. I don't know, I just feel that way. Because it's, again, you're making that intention, you're taking that initiative. You're making that intention, you're taking that initiative. It's not as simple, I'm going to make that intention and go to sleep. Yeah, make that intention, set your alarm clock. Like, you're making that intention, you're taking that initiative. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that whoever comes to me walking, I go to him running. Right? This is interesting because unfortunately the first part of the hadith means you got to do something yourself. You got to go walking, and then Allah will come to you running. We expect Allah come to us running, but we don't want to start with the walking. So this is where this is what it comes to taqwa. Taqwa means staying away. Different theologians have put different levels of taqwa depending on the level that you're at. Start by stopping yourself from committing major sins. Stay away from it. Temptation may be there, but what's the easiest way to stay away from committing major sins? Look for alternatives. Looking for alternatives that are good. So for example, if you have to commit a major sin, like for example, like you really have to commit a major sin, like I really need to eat ice cream. So then, major sin. So then what you do is then you go drink some water. Then you're not going to eat that ice cream because you're going to be full. You get my point? I had to emphasize the major sin part about it. It's not a major sin. Maybe it is. Who knows? Some people believe it. There's a difference of opinion. But what I'm saying is you start cutting it slowly. You start focusing and cutting everything slowly. Eventually, things will get better, and eventually, you're gonna start noticing a lot of different problems that you actually had that you didn't notice. Fix the major, you get to the minor. I injured my shoulder here, my left shoulder here, right in there. It was a big injury. It was hurting my whole hand. I couldn't move my neck. I couldn't move my hand. I went to get physiotherapy. I got some myofascial release physiotherapy, and the second this fixed up, the doctor said that everything's fixed because after about 2 weeks, I was able to move it properly. I was able to put in circles and everything. It was perfect. But what happened is, as soon as that was fixed, this side went. It went, and to this day, it's gone. Like, I lift my hand here, right here, I feel so much pain here. And I did physio, I did everything. They did a whole ultrasound on my hand, and they said I have carpal tunnel on this hand, carpal tunnel syndrome. So I'm constantly massaging this. I wear the glove at night before going to sleep. It looks pretty cool, though. I mean, wearing a glove at night, just the fingers are showing. It's pretty nice. But it hurts my hand a lot. All night I'm in pain. Like, I'm sleeping like this, my hand up in the air. If someone walks by, they're like, "Yes, you have a question, sir?" Like, that's like sometimes just to relieve that pressure. Sometimes I have to stand up and just stand there because the pain is. So I went to the physiotherapist and I said, "What's happening to me? Like, you fixed one thing, messed another thing up." So the physiotherapist said, "No, actually what happened is there was a vein that was like, it was gone. So when we fixed this, we released that vein and woke it up. And when that vein woke up, it's actually on fire right now. Because when you were heavy, it basically gave up on you, and it said it's not working anymore." So when there was a lot of release done from my neck here, and when that release was done from my neck, it fixed this side, but it woke up that vein that was stuck. I couldn't feel it. It woke it up, and now there's just a pain. But I was like, I liked it when there was no pain. But the physiotherapist said it's okay. It will eventually get better. It's awake now, so it'll take time. And I noticed that's what happens when we want to connect with Allah. When we start eliminating the big things and looking for alternatives, when you look for alternatives, fix the one thing, then other things pop up. And it becomes a reaction of constantly wanting to fix this or wanting to fix that. How many of you like to fix cars or whatever? This was an analogy my brother told me. He said, when you actually fix the car, you fix the big things, then you can actually hear the small noises inside the car. And we're like, what's that noise? It's always been there. You just couldn't hear it because the big noise was taking over. And this is a method. This method that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created is such an awesome method because you fix things up, and as you fix things, you're actually able to iron and fix everything else out. It's such a beautiful method, but we're too afraid. And that's the fourth quality, which is what I call taqwa. Which is known as taqwa. What was the first one? Bir, ihsan, sabr, and taqwa. When you have these four qualities, then these four qualities will make you will bring you, especially if you're studying the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and authentic knowledge, your mastery of Islamic, it will give you perspective. You're going to start seeing far. Number two, you're going to understand the knowledge a lot better. That perspective will give you an awesome vision. It's like cleaning your glasses. And number three, you're actually going to, when you start mastering the different sciences, you'll master it properly. You'll gain that malaka. You'll be a master of a science by having these qualities. Imagine if this is done with the Qur'an. What does that make you? That takes you into Ahlullah. Inna lillahi ahlina minan nas. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a family among the people. Qila man hum ya Rasulullah. Who are these people? Ahlullah hum ahlul Qur'an wa khasatuhu. The people of the Qur'an who are sincere. That sincerity is coming in because we're focusing on all of these points. You all understand? And the fifth thing, which is not one of the four, the fifth thing, which is a thing that I'm bringing in on my own. This is like a my thing now, okay? Not part of the four. These four, Imam Shatibi mentioned. You guys know that? Imam Shatibi mentioned these four things. He said, ulul birri wal ihsani wal sabri wal tuqa hulahum biha ja'a al-Qur'anu mufassala. Four qualities. For those of you who can't remember that, just read Shatibi. I think line number or something, before 20 somewhere. Maybe 17 or something like that. That he mentions these four qualities as qualities of people of the Qur'an. But the fifth thing, and I've pulled this very strongly, is, and this is general advice, has nothing to do with anything, but it's like really, don't do this. Stay away from backbiting. Stay away from backbiting. That's the worst thing that anyone can do. Stay away from backbiting. As advice for students of knowledge, do not backbite. I cannot stress this enough. I cannot stress this enough. Don't backbite. I have no stories around this either. It's just this little statement. I'll finish with that. Don't backbite. Think about it. لقاء الناس ليس يفيد شيئا سوى الهذيان من قيل وقال فأقلل من لقاء الناس إلا لطلب العلم أو إصلاح حالي. Humaydi, I believe, he said, لقاء الناس, meeting with people, ليس يفيد شيئا, does not give you any benefit. سوى الهذيان, except for jokes, من قيل وقال and hearsay. Oh, he said, she said, he said, she said. فأقلل من لقاء الناس إلا. So lesson, don't mix with people all the time. Go mix with people just a little bit, except لطلب العلم, to seek knowledge, أو إصلاح حالي, or to fix yourself. Because think about all the conversation that you had if it wasn't for seeking knowledge or bettering yourself in any way, shape, or form. It could be anything, like, hey, Azawar, can you teach me how to cook? I'm bettering myself. Or, how do you vacuum this carpet? It's so big and you have a small vacuum. Can you please teach? Like, things like that. Like, educating or growing. Think about any other conversation that you had. See what I mean? You can think about it. Or start now. Start now and go and look at all the conversation. You know what this person said. You know what this person did. You know what this person said. Backbiting, when I talk about backbiting, I'm pretty general. Now, a lot of people say, oh, backbiting is okay in these situations, that situation, and this and that. For me, just put all that aside. Don't backbite at all. Because what backbiting does, it stops you from moving forward. It stops you from moving ahead. You start dwelling on the past. You start dwelling. And the more you talk about it, the more jealousy comes in. And one day I'll give you. One day I'll send you all my khutbah on backbiting, where I talk about the 3 things that lead to backbiting. But backbiting, like, I personally believe that backbiting is probably like the worst sin. Like, of the worst sins that you can do, backbiting is up there, and that's something that students of knowledge should never ever do. Because when you start backbiting, it takes you backwards. It takes you backwards. You're not going to be able to move ahead. You look, you critique, you move ahead, you study, but stay away from backbiting. And honestly, I have no other stories. I have no stories or any off tangents about this at all. It's just very simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا, and none of you backbite one another. Don't talk bad about someone behind their back. Don't even need to talk about anyone behind their back. Really. Is there a reason to talk about someone behind their back? Unless you want to help them out. Hey, Uthman, I'm gonna do some. I'm gonna just massage his arm, Uthman's arm. I'm talking behind his back. So that's a different story. But if we're talking about something or someone else behind their backs, backbiting is the worst thing any student of knowledge can do. And that's one thing that you will probably want to stay away from. 4 qualities, and the one thing you shouldn't do. And that's all that I have for you. That's 4 messages that I have for you. I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the ability to practice upon this, to bring in these qualities into our life, to understand what it means to move ahead in knowledge, to bring in this knowledge into our life, and to please, inshallah, please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all the knowledge that we're gaining, and to grow and to keep on climbing the ranks of Jannah with seeking beneficial knowledge, and to bring these 4 qualities into our life and to eliminate ourselves from that one bad quality. جزاك الله خيرا. قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم.